Alright, so I'm out here, I'm at a boat lift motor, and these are single phase reversible half horsepower, 3/4 horsepower type motors. The reason for this video is I got a crazy switch off the internet, but I wanted to start with the motors themselves. This one is, these motors typically have a winding and they'll go in a direction, you know, that powers the motor up and down, but they also have, you see it on the outside here, either a starting capacitor or a starting motor. And that gets them going in a certain direction, and once they get in that direction, they'll disable the capacitor or starter motor, and then they'll keep running in that direction until you cut the power, and it'll slow down, and then it goes the opposite way. It just reverses the starter motor, and it will lower or raise your boat. I got a boat in this case, and so a lot of wires come out of these. I wanted to show that code. I don't know if you can see it real well, but that's the wiring for low voltage, or 115 voltage is what I'm on here in America. And I've also got one of these Salzer switches, and so I had replaced this motor and this switch not too long ago, but I've got it backwards. But this will raise the boat, and basically you hear it raising the boat. You'll stop, the other way, it'll lower it, and if you actually switch it from raise to lower real quick, it'll keep going the same direction, because the starter, it's not going slow enough for the starter impacted. So I'm going to, inside, I'll start to diagnose some of this Salzer switch. It's a drum type switch, and I've got this, like I said, this crazy switch on Amazon that not a lot of videos and stuff, and not a lot of information other than a simple wire diagram like you saw on the edge of this motor to help people online. So this is a video to help you. Here's a picture of the other davit and the wiring diagram. Again, this one's a very common wiring diagram here. This is a original davit master. I don't know how old it is. You can see the thing's getting a little rusted out. The other one I had replaced, and I hadn't realized quite at that point in time that they had a starting cap, or I didn't want to order it. But yeah, these things from the original manufacturer, they're ball door, and they're $600 to $900, so they're quite expensive. That one I got as a replacement is just a knockoff. It was a $150 or something like that, so probably won't last as long as this one is, but I'll make do. Here I had the switch. It was one of those Salzer switches, and I had replaced that one not too long ago, and but that was like you had to hold it type switch instead of clicking a certain way. Well, finally the plastic broke. The plastic was broke when I originally got it, and the plastic broke within a year on this replacement one. And so I think I replaced the other switch. So I decided to go with another switch style rather than that plastic, because it, you know, I'll show you when I get inside what I've got, a vice grip hanging off the drum, and it's practically a brand new drum. But when I ordered it, I ordered it off Amazon, cheaper one, because these switches were in the $50 on eBay and $70 and up from there. So they're a little bit expensive on the switches, but you'll see they're quite a complex item when I break one apart. And as an output on this motor, I've got 4 wires coming out of here, and they're all kinds of crazy colored compared to the standards. There's no T numbers on this one, which you see a lot referenced in some of the diagrams. So kind of on my own. What I did do is take a picture of what these wires were at least plugged into, because this one was working right, and then I'd attempt to diagnose the switch, or in past instances I'd just replaced them, bought an identical switch from Salzer, and make sure I put the wires in the right locations. But that's some of the things you run into with these older wiring. So I've shown a couple common diagrams on the 2 motors I had out there, and if you look it up online, you'll see something like this for a 1-phase, and mostly they'll have 6 wires, 2 coming in from the power source, the 115 AC, a hot and neutral, and then you have the 4 that typically goes to the motor. I'm not showing the ground here, a safety ground. It's usually a green wire, a 5th wire that connects to the 3rd pole and a plug. But normally they'll show one side, and this is the 2 most common. There's probably another common diagram, but you'll see that it looks like this when it goes one way, and when it's in the middle position it's all disconnected, and on the other way it goes the other way. This is more common, and you see this on one of the motors that was out there, is that basically I drew the S's in there. That's what I call the starter plug, but normally your hot goes in and your neutral goes in, and they'll pass through, but they'll reverse these 2, and you see it's the exact opposite when it goes the other way, and that's reversing the starter motor to change the initial direction, and then the motor just keeps perpetuating that direction, whichever way it started. And sometimes at the motor you'll see something like reverse 5 and 8, or swap 5 and 8, or swap 3 and 8, and reverse 3 and 8 to reverse. So that's the kind of diagram I'm talking about here. If you see that diagram, or if you're working on this, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the hookup, but it's the way that you'll see these diagrams online. So the inside of the Salzer, S-A-L-Z-E-R, double points over the A, I don't know exactly what they call it. It's European, I assume. Nice quality inside. This happens to have, this is what the inside of my box looked like. I still have the vice grip, because what wears out is the part that goes over this, and it starts spinning on it. And that's pretty much a design problem with these, but otherwise it's a high quality unit. And this one that I've got here, it's only momentary. If I hold it one direction, it'll pop back to the middle. And I didn't really like that, but it's what I bought when it was online. It was on eBay for cheaper than the normal price, so I picked up a couple when I'd done my last ones. And this side over here goes into the base, and it locks in with a couple holes, and then the front goes over the top, and you saw that switch I was flipping out there. And this is a P220, and there's a lot of data online, so it's kind of nice. You will see the wiring. But basically, for single pole use, what you see here is you see a 3, 4, 7, 8, 11, 12 on one side, so there's those numbers, and on the other side you got 1, 2, 5, 6, 9, 10. So there's 12 total connections. I know you have 6 wires, so you got to figure out where this goes. Like I said, the online is pretty good. If I look at this at a certain angle, you'll see the screw. Like I'm looking at the number 3 screw right here, but you actually stick the wire in over here, and it just clamps it. So that's kind of a funky input. You see I still have one wire. I couldn't get the screw unstripped. That's actually the number 1 position. That was the hot, I believe, going in. So what I drew it in a more realistic terms, so the 2 are and it's always 1 and 3, that's what connects to the house power, and the other connections go to the motor, and they'll wire into 2, 4, 8, and 12 positions, and the rest of the positions on that 12 position aren't used. What you'll see when you turn it one way is that 1 connects to 2, 3 connects to 4, but also 1 connects to 8. So the hot power, I happen to know the 1 is the hot power, because if you've ever, you trace the plug back, and I'll divert to an American plug. You see this, the left-hand side, the fatter side, that's your neutral typically. The shorter side on the right-hand side is your hot, and of course the safety ground is the 3rd wire down at the bottom. So you know you're hot coming in, and I traced it back to the black wire, which happens to be the number 1 position. So 2 and 8 get a hot when it's counterclockwise or left or raise or whatever you want to call it. And the neutrals become 4 and 12 for driving the starter motor. And of course middle, everything's disconnected, and clockwise, which is the lower, or whatever you want to call it, turns to the right clockwise. It still puts the hots go 1 to 2 and the neutrals go 3 to 4, but it is swapping the 8 to 12. So now 1 goes to 12. So it is. So I know 8 and 12. Those wires are going to my starter, because that's what you do, is you reverse the starter wires to go different directions, the positive and the negative. So once you kind of draw it in that diagram, maybe it makes a little more sense than this diagram made up here. But clearly, I can identify by the I took some pictures, and I know which wire colors. I know my wire colors don't match out there what the standards are for the motors. If you look at the motors, there's all kinds of wires coming out of motors, and you really got to figure out your model and what it is. But so that's the start of that, and that's the Salzer switch. Pretty simple. At least there's 6. I know there's more than 12, but when you go online and you do single phase, they tell you exactly, hey, it's 1, 3, 2, 4, 8, and 12, and so you got 6 wires, and 6 wires pretty easy for me to figure out as a lay person. So when I got this Amico QS60 in, I know it was a cheap one, it's Chinese, but it's supposedly waterproof at 60 amp. But when I got it in, I'm not going to show you it quite yet. I'll show you the puzzle instead, which is there's no wiring diagram with it, and eventually it's got 5 sets of poles for all the wires. And when you're trying to do a single phase, I'm trying to match up the four outputs and the 2 inputs. And in addition, it's got some little wire things on the side that tie together, where I've shown the dash lines there. So it got really hard to try to figure that out, and I'll show that the left operates the bottom, and then the 2nd and 4th one, and this one's the 3rd and 5th. And I was trying to figure out how to do. I spent about 15 minutes in my head. If you want, you can pause the video if you want a puzzler and try to figure out how to wire you know, all the 6 wires into that and get the neutrals and commons to disconnect, right, the power. Otherwise it would keep running on you. So it was a little perplexing. Like I said, no paperwork, nothing really online. YouTube wasn't helping me. You know, the site for Amoco wasn't helping me. It brought me somewhere else. Nothing on Amazon was telling me you might be following the link from Amazon to this video, in which case, yeah, go off and try to solve that, and I'll come back with the solution right now. So the solution that I had when I wired this was not to wire the neutral into any of those sets of things, because I just couldn't get it working. So what I've got here is, remember, the bottom set is something that it goes on when it's to the left or to the right. So that's going to be my break and hot. So I want to make sure I know my hot in, because I don't want my hot going through the motor and through the entire switch and then getting back and broken on the neutral side. So make sure you get the hot wired in here, but I'll wiring the hot to that, and I'll bypass the neutral by the switch entirely. I guess that'll be okay, because at least it will disconnect power. So on the other side of that hot, you know, that's going to be your primary winding, and that's going to be your primary neutral, and you're going to have to splice these wires or make sets, and then you'll wire the hot into this one, which effectively puts it in first and fifth, and the neutral into second and third, and then you just have the 2 starter wires come out depending on the direction you want over here. And these 2 are tied together, so you tie it to either one of those, not a big deal. And so that's just a crazy way to get 2 wires in and 2 wires out and get them to cross and switch. You effectively need, you know, 8 poles and 2 switches with a bunch of crap in between. So that's the way I figured out to do it. I think that's the best way to do it. I really couldn't figure another way to do it, and there's no solution online. So go about wiring that, and I'll show you the finished product next. So this is what the end result looks like when it's wired up. I got to fit some stuff in the boxes, but you can see there's not a lot of space in the Amoco on the side rails. And as I flip over to the side, you can probably see the metal. That's why how this one connects to this one down here, and this one connects to this one, and the opposite side is these 2 and these 2. So here's my reversing wires for the starter motor, and everything else is just wired up as I described it. And yep, I've got it plugged in down at the plug down there, so we'll go for arc and spark here. Going up, and the other direction going down. So seems to be working all right. I'm gonna have to make sure when I put that cover on that all these wires get squeezed in there, but I guess that'll be okay. Not the best job, but it's working. So that's how you wire up this cheap $15 Amoco switch. And here's the finished shot with the cover on it. I'm gonna have to mark, you know, which way is up. That should be an easy task. Label it. There's the Chinese label, QS60 on the Amoco. So that concludes this video.